The metallic clang of the bunker door reverberated through the chamber as it sealed shut, locking out the world above. Inside, the air was stale and cool, a stark contrast to the chaos they had fled. The three survivalists, Tom, Jane, and Eric, stood in the dim light of their subterranean refuge, their faces lined with exhaustion and relief. They had prepared for years, stockpiling supplies and fortifying their hideout against the worst. But nothing could have prepared them for what awaited below. Tom, the leader of their small group, was a former military man, his demeanor hardened by years of service. Jane, a sharp-minded engineer, had designed much of the bunker's layout, ensuring its self-sufficiency. Eric, a resourceful medic, was the glue that held them together, his calm presence a balm for their frayed nerves. The first few days passed in relative peace. They settled into a routine, each member of the trio performing their designated tasks. The bunker, a labyrinth of concrete and steel, was a marvel of engineering. It was equipped with everything they needed: food, water, medical supplies, and even a rudimentary entertainment system to stave off boredom. But then the whispers began. It started with Eric. He was in the storage room, inventorying their supplies, when he heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible murmur. He dismissed it as the product of his tired mind and continued his work. But the whispers persisted, growing louder each day, until he could no longer ignore them. "Do you hear that?" Eric asked one evening, his voice trembling. "Hear what?" Tom replied, his brow furrowing. "The whispers. It's like voices, just out of earshot." Jane looked up from her notebook, her expression skeptical. "We're underground. Sound carries differently down here. It's probably just the ventilation system." Eric nodded, but the unease lingered. The next night, as he lay in his bunk, the whispers returned, closer this time. He strained to make out the words, but they eluded him like shadows in the dark. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the bunker grew increasingly tense. The whispers spread to Jane and Tom, filling the air with a cacophony of disembodied voices. They argued over the source. Tom insisted it was just their minds playing tricks, while Jane theorized about acoustic anomalies. But deep down they all felt it, an oppressive presence watching them. It was during one of these arguments that the first hallucination occurred. Tom was in the common room, pacing back and forth, when he saw it, a figure standing at the edge of his vision. He spun around, but the figure was gone. "Did you see that?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Jane and Eric exchanged worried glances. "See what?" Jane asked cautiously. "There was someone here. I swear I saw someone." Eric approached him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Tom, we're the only ones here. You need to rest." But rest was impossible. The hallucinations grew more frequent, haunting their every waking moment. Jane saw her dead brother, pale and silent, staring at her from the end of the corridor. Eric witnessed the walls bleeding, the crimson rivulets pooling at his feet, and Tom, tormented by visions of his fallen comrades, became increasingly paranoid, convinced they were under attack. Their isolation, once a haven, now felt like a prison. They could no longer trust their senses or each other. The whispers had transformed into taunts, mocking their fear. The hallucinations, vivid and terrifying, blurred the line between reality and nightmare. One night, as the trio huddled in the common room, the whispers reached a crescendo. The lights flickered, plunging the bunker into darkness. Panic set in as they fumbled for their flashlights, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. "We need to stick together," Tom said, his voice barely audible above the din. But the darkness was disorienting, and they soon found themselves separated. Jane stumbled through the corridors, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. She could hear the others calling out, their voices distorted and distant. "Jane, over here," Eric's voice echoed, but when she turned the corner, she found only emptiness. Desperation clawed at her mind as she pressed on, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. Then she saw it, an open door at the end of the hall, one that should have been sealed. She approached cautiously, her flashlight trembling in her hand. Inside the room, the air was thick with an unearthly chill. In the center stood a figure, its back turned to her. Jane's heart pounded as she raised her flashlight, the beam illuminating the figure's twisted form. It turned slowly, revealing a face contorted in agony. Jane screamed, stumbling backward, but the figure advanced, its eyes empty and hollow. She tripped and fell, her flashlight skittering across the floor. "Jane!" Tom's voice cut through the darkness, and she felt his strong arms pull her to her feet. "We need to get out of here. Now." They ran through the labyrinthine corridors, the whispers growing louder, more frantic. They found Eric near the entrance, his face pale and drawn. "We're not alone," he said, his voice hollow. "Something's in here with us." Tom nodded, his expression grim. "We need to leave. We can't stay here." But as they reached the bunker door, they found it sealed, the mechanism jammed. Panic set in as they realized their escape route was blocked. "We're trapped," Jane whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The malevolent force, sensing their desperation, intensified its assault. The bunker, once a sanctuary, had become a maze of terror. The whispers grew louder, their voices merging into a deafening roar. The hallucinations, more vivid and terrifying, pushed the survivalists to the brink of madness. Tom, driven by a mix of fear and fury, led them to the control room. "There has to be a way to override the door," he muttered, frantically typing commands into the terminal. But the screen flickered, displaying nonsensical symbols. "It's no use," Eric said, his voice shaking. "It's controlling everything." Jane stared at the terminal, her mind racing. "What if it's feeding off our fear? What if we're making it stronger?" Tom looked at her, a spark of hope in his eyes. "Then we need to fight back. We can't let it win." They banded together, determined to confront the malevolent force. Drawing on their remaining strength, they navigated the bunker's dark corridors, their flashlights piercing the gloom. The whispers taunted them, but they pressed on, united by a common goal. In the heart of the bunker, they found it, a pulsating mass of darkness, throbbing with malevolent energy. The sight was enough to drive them to their knees, but they stood firm, refusing to succumb to the terror. Tom stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're not afraid of you." The darkness writhed, its form shifting and changing. It lashed out, sending a wave of cold fear crashing over them. But the survivalists held their ground, their resolve unwavering. Jane, drawing on her engineering knowledge, began to dismantle the control panel. "If we can disrupt its power source, we might weaken it," she said, her fingers working quickly. Eric, using his medical supplies, created a makeshift explosive. "This should do the trick," he said, handing it to Tom. With a final, determined nod, Tom placed the explosive at the heart of the darkness. They retreated, taking cover as the device detonated, sending a shockwave through the bunker. The whispers ceased, the darkness dissipating like smoke in the wind. The bunker, once a tomb of terror, was silent. But as they emerged from their hiding place, a sense of unease lingered. The bunker door, now unsealed, stood open, revealing the world outside. "We did it," Jane said, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Tom and Eric nodded, but their expressions were grim. "We survived," Tom said, his voice low, "but we'll never forget." As they stepped into the light, the echoes of their ordeal followed them, a reminder of the darkness that lurked below, and somewhere in the depths of the earth, the malevolent force waited, its hunger undiminished, ready to prey on the next souls who dared to venture into the shadows. In the aftermath of their harrowing experience, the survivalists never spoke of the bunker again, but the memory of the whispers, the hallucinations, and the darkness stayed with them, a silent testament to the horrors they had faced. And in the quiet moments, when the night was still and the shadows long, they could almost hear it, the echoes below, a chilling reminder that some evils are never truly vanquished.